Today, we're going to be speaking about imposter syndrome. Did you know that 70% of people experience imposter syndrome? And many people experience it more than once. I was creating a presentation for a women's leadership conference, and I decided to do a little more digging into the history of imposter syndrome. Where did it come from, and how did we get this name? And what does it tell us about ourselves? So let's explore this today. Welcome to The Rooted Leader. Hi, I'm Kathleen Wisemandle. I'm a scientist, leader for over 20 years, and now a leadership coach. I know that most leaders are busy delivering work, so I created the short leadership minisodes that meet busy leaders where they are, offering insight, reflection, and questions that support growth in the flow of your work. Thank you for joining. So let's start with what is imposter syndrome. It was great to see that there was research back in 1978 by Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes about the imposter phenomenon in women. And what was interesting to me is that it was known as a phenomenon before, not a syndrome. It was attributed to these women finding it really hard to find their own success in their professions. They felt it had little social value. And I think about this time where women were working outside of the home. Some were choosing careers versus family, and they lived in a fear that they were fraudulent or phony. At that time, a lot of it was attributed to the societal sex role stereotyping, but these things still exist today. So what do we know now? In addition to the 1978 research, I also found a book by Dr. Valerie Young called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women: Why Capable People Suffer from the Imposter Syndrome and How to Thrive in Spite of It. And I thought it was a perfect title. Dr. Young had completed her educational doctorate on why women still experienced crushing self-doubt despite their success. It's a really great book if you want to learn more about the topic. I was presenting the topic of imposter syndrome to a women's leadership conference, and I wanted to gather thoughts and insights from research and different articles, and I was really shocked to hear some different points of view. Why did women have a higher tendency to have imposter syndrome? So I looked at articles by Ruchika Tulsian and Jodi Antbury in HBR, and I will link those in the show notes. One is called Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome, and one is End Imposter Syndrome in Your Workplace. Really thinking about imposter syndrome from a systemic lens. And I don't know about you, but I had never really talked about imposter syndrome in the workplace with my peers or boss. If we look at the power structures, they really haven't changed since 1978. And this can impact us, creating a feeling that we don't belong, because we might not have the same opinions or experiences as people in power. Brené Brown talks about, if you're not pale, male, or from Yale, you may be feeling this sometimes. Non-white women face the bias in two dimensions, not just gender, but race as well. Those identifying as LGBTQIA+ may also feel biases with multiple dimensions. These just weren't identified back in 1978. And based on the workplace, this includes dimensions beyond just gender, but race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, or other factors. So you might ask yourself, is it only experienced in the work setting? The quick answer is no. It can really happen anytime you're in a new setting, doing something different around new people. Try to understand, if you can, why might you be feeling different or uncomfortable? Why might you be doubting yourself? What could it be that is triggering that emotion for you? The truth about imposter syndrome is, first, the term syndrome makes us feel there's something wrong with us. The term phenomenon just makes it sound so cool. It's normal to feel unsure when we're doing something new or different, and we aren't alone. White men also feel this. When I was speaking with a few of my friends, I asked, do you as a white male feel this? And he said, yeah, I sure do. But I feel this way, and then I kind of let it go and I do what I need to do. Women tend to hold on to this feeling more, partially attributed to power structures and the way that we feel and approach things differently. I also think that microaggressions and lack of representation are real. Don't minimize that. We don't see ourselves in places of power, and that can put even more pressure on us to achieve. I had a previous client who felt that she needed to be perfect in everything she did because she was representing all the young Black women coming after her. And that's a heavy burden. That's a heavy lift. Has society created this label for us to feel uncomfortable, to avoid the need for more systemic change? That question was brought up in the HBR article, and I thought it was so intriguing to think, wow, if we switched some of the systemic power structures, or if we put ourselves in environments where we can thrive and feel accepted, would we feel less self-doubt? Have feelings of exclusion and power structures led to greater feelings of our own self-doubt? I think so. We lack an environment that allows for different leadership styles, especially in larger corporations. So how does the way that you show yourself authentically fit with the persona you're expected to comply with in the professional environment you're in? If we think about it from an individual lens, I love Carl Rogers' self-theory, which talks about how we achieve a congruence of the image that we see ourselves now versus the image we see a future self. During times of transition or growth, we might have a bigger gap between our current state versus our future state. And that gap can be so big that it just helps and fuels the self-doubt we feel. So if you're considering your own leadership development or even your future vision for yourself, ask yourself a few questions. How does your future self look? How do you want it to look? And then how right now are you seeing yourself? What is that gap? What might be the reason for your self-doubt? And how can you make steps to give yourself compassion as you're moving towards that future state? Why do we feel incongruent with our future self? Incongruence shows up as doubt. It can happen at a time of transition. It can happen when you're starting something new, like starting a new podcast. It can come from previously held self-limiting beliefs, things that are irrational negative belief. Sometimes these have been reinforced by family, friends, teachers, coaches, toxic bosses, and they stay with us. When we have these limiting beliefs, we look unconsciously for proof that they're true, and that keeps us holding ourselves back. When we think about the coping mechanisms we have to keep us safe from being too big or maybe bringing up an opinion that's very different from those around you, that feeling of doubt can keep us safe so that we aren't leaning into that discomfort. So let's talk about 3 takeaways. 1, what can we do to overcome our own imposter syndrome? We can, as individuals, know our own worth. In the presentations I give on this topic, I say to people, please keep track of all the compliments and the small achievements, even if it's on a Google Doc, Word document, or on your phone. And times when you're feeling unsure of yourself or not confident in something that you want to try, make sure you go back to that list and see how much you've grown. 2, recognize that discomfort occurs with growth. You want to safely push past your self-doubt or understand what it's about. What is that doubt informing? When you're talking with people experiencing this, help them work through what is causing them to feel this way. And 3, we want to build psychological safe environments where we can learn from these experiences and mistakes. It's okay to have these experiences, and we want to model vulnerability and courage for our children, our peers, our employees. If we're pushing past self-doubt and speaking up where our voices might be a little bit different, it could encourage others. Be an amplifier of people who might not necessarily have the social capital to be heard. Foster inclusion of leaders from diverse experiences and backgrounds, races, ethnicities, gender identities. It's really important to foster inclusion and build psychological safety and feeling of being seen and heard. now more than ever. A moment of reflection. Ask yourself, what does playing small help me avoid? I might feel more comfortable, but what could I do? What could I become if I became a little more uncomfortable? What does my behavior help protect me from? What do I miss by playing it safe? If we're playing it safe, we might miss out on possible opportunities. We could miss out on utilizing our talents, connecting with others, and learning beyond what we're expecting. I really like this poem by Adrienne Rich that I'll put in the show notes. It's that most notable fact that culture imprints on women is our sense of limits. The most important thing we can do for another is to illuminate and expand their sense of actual possibilities. And in 2026, I think we all need the hope of possibility. Know your worth. Trust your intuition. Trust your experiences. Thank you for joining the Rooted Leader podcast. And if today's minisode sparked something for you, take a moment to reflect on the questions in the show notes. You'll find links and resources there as well. If you'd like to share a thought or a question for a future episode, you can email me at therootedleaderpodcast@gmail.com or reply directly on the Rooted Leader Substack. Please be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Until next time, stay rooted in authenticity and empathy. Thank you.